Welcome to Canucks After Dark. Here are your hosts, Parker Hallowell and Clay Emo.
Good evening, Vancouver, and welcome back. Canucks After Dark here on Wednesday, July 21st. Our first episode with 32 different NHL teams with full rosters officially. And the Vancouver Canucks have a fresh new rival. And of course, I am joined as always by Canuck Clay. How are you doing today, Clay?
I'm great, Parker. I've been looking forward to this one. Not only is this the month of Wednesday episodes, but yes, a 32nd team now. 32 teams have rosters, all varying degrees of strength, which I know we are going to get into today. But it was an exciting day, not only for the NHL, of course, for Seattle, but I think for Vancouver Canucks fans as well.
Absolutely. It's just going to build up. And one thing that was really exciting to me was as they were announcing the regular season home opener for the Seattle Kraken, and they said, whoever was announcing it said, "Who do you want to see on night one?" And the entire crowd was yelling Vancouver. And then they said it, and there was cheering and excitement. And that was really cool to see because Seattle's going to be embracing this rivalry right off the bat too, at least these diehard fans that went to the reveal event. So it's a brand new rivalry, the first real geographical rival for the Canucks.
Yes,
and it is going to be a ton of fun.
Well, I know you were excited. Is it public? I'm allowed to say. No, you put it on Twitter. Didn't you do a reservation of some sort?
Yep, I've booked my hotel for October 23rd. I will hopefully be in the arena that night for the first Kraken game in Climate Pledge Arena, which will be fun. But as always, everyone who's watching live, we are so happy you are here, and everyone listening after the fact on the podcast, good to have you on as well. We'll be reading your comments throughout the show, and we can show them up on screen, just like this one from Justin saying, "Let the rivalry begin." Absolutely.
He's ready. He's ready.
It's going to be a ton of fun. We've got a lot of topics because it was a big week, right? I mean, the last 7 days, a ton has happened. We had that big roster freeze day on Sunday where there was just news flying in left and right about like 11 trades being made on Sunday alone. Just
and the Canucks were in one.
Yes. And it wasn't a bad one. Teams just trying to shore up their protection lists and make sure they're not losing any guys for free. I think most teams did a pretty good job of that, trying to, protect their assets as well as possible. And then of course, today was wild with every team's pick except Detroit's being unveiled before like 9 a.m. And the whole expansion draft process being ruined. But we do have a lot of stuff to get into. And I guess there's no better place to start than with the Seattle Kraken joining the NHL and making their selections today.
Yeah, before we get into the picks, Parker, where do you come out on this whole that all basically we knew all 30 picks by 3 p.m. today? Were you fine with it? Forget about our streams first. We can get into that because that's another fun little added factor. But overall, this whole philosophy of now compared to 4 years ago, Twitter, YouTube, vloggers, reporters, insiders. What's your take on it?
So personally, when I saw a couple get leaked out at like 7:30 after the list got I was like, okay, maybe like 4 or 5 will come through, and that's fine, right? At least there'll be some suspense. But as the day went on and as the next 2 hours really went on and every single teams was known, I was kind of thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, well, I guess tonight's going to be fun. I have nothing to talk about. Look, if we're trying to figure out who to blame, right? It's entirely the NHL. In my opinion, the insiders are doing their job. Frank Saravalli should not care about ESPN's first NHL event. That's not his job. His job is to bring a bunch of attention to his new employer, Daily Faceoff, and he absolutely crushed every single insider out of the park today and cemented his name as right now the number one insider in the industry, at least so far this offseason. So he did his job. He did everything he was supposed to do, and the NHL, the planning was terrible. You want Seattle to submit their lists 10 hours before the reveal. That is way too much time to allow someone or a bunch of people to have leaks come out, especially when you have agents being informed, families being informed. Someone's going to spill the beans, and you gave too much time to do it, in my opinion.
No, that's a really good point. You're right. The insiders, and you're right. Frank Cervelli did take the lead. Then you still have guys like LeBrun and Friedman and Chris Johnson. They're going hard too. But you're right. With that 10-hour gap between an agent or someone seeing Giordano get on a flight, right, on a plane to Seattle or whatever it is. Like, I just made that one up. But you know what I'm saying is there are too many potential leaks, cracks, whatever it be. Now, I can't remember. How did they do the Vegas one? Was it way better or way more tight?
I think so. I think there was a couple that leaked out, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't remember the entire thing being spoiled beforehand. Like, I do remember a lot of stuff coming out. And then there was a bunch of people saying, well, at least we're going to hear about all the side deals tonight and stuff like that. But none of that came to fruition. Apparently, those are supposed to be announced tomorrow, but then there's people like Cap Friendly saying there were no side deals made on when it comes to who Seattle actually picked and who they actually took, but there's side deals on like after the fact trades with these new assets, and it's just a whole can of worms that no one really knows what's going on. But at the end of the day, I mean, Seattle's got their roster and we just had it completely ruined.
And no one is ever going to confuse you or me as insiders, but we like to make videos reacting to what we hear, right? That's kind of what we do. And I don't know about you, Parker. I had one person who's actually a regular viewer of my stuff. He was actually very, very gracious, and he just says, please put spoiler in the title because I talked about how Kole was going to be the Canucks pick because of what Rick Dollywall reported. And, generally when I get those kind of comments, I kind of dismiss them and I kind of say, well, grow up, or this is kind of the way of it. But actually the way he wrote it, I'll admit, Parker, I actually felt a tiny bit bad. So I wrote back to him. I just said, thank you for your honesty and for not going to town on me. You're right. But if, were you going to plan to stay off of social media all day? And I just kind of asked him nicely and he came back to me nicely and it was all fine. But did it give me pause? Not really. Cause I don't have to be the first one, but I do want to show that I know what I'm talking about and I can react to it, right? I don't know.
Right. I mean, we could have made our videos at 7 p.m. Tonight and said, hey, look, because of they showed it and Kole was picked. But we had the information way earlier.
Yeah.
And most people don't get their breaking news from us. Most people like our opinions typically and like our takes on these news. And that's why they follow us, right? No one's following us because no one's watching your Canucks game post-game live stream to find out what happened in the game, right? They want to know your takes on it. They want chat's opinions and everything like that. So personally, stuff like that, my thought is, look, if you're not going to see it from me, Sportsnet's probably going to post something on it. A bunch of other channels are probably going to post something on it. It's all over Twitter. It's all over Reddit. It's all over XYZ website. You're going to run into it somewhere. If I'm the first place you see it, I'm not going to be the last place you see it. So,
although I saw the comment on your video from the week a couple days ago. So didn't someone think you were replacing Don Cherry? That was awesome.
Oh yeah, I don't remember exactly. I guess so. I was doing my stream with doing a mock expansion draft back on Sunday,
which was
It
good.
was a really fun stream. Had chat doing polls and stuff to pick our players. And this guy, I guess he thought he was watching Sportsnet or something. And he comes in and he's like, where'd they find this guy? Bring back Don Cherry. I might be a little confused. To give him benefit of the doubt, he did say that in the middle of his comment. He said, I don't know if I'm confused or something, but who brought this guy in? And I'm like, buddy, this is YouTube. Like everyone, like you can make a video. Like go for it. Like
you should invite him. Invite him. Don't replace me, but invite him. Yeah,
bring him on the show. Yeah. So things like that just crack me up, and it's like, look. I mean, I'm not in the wrong here. You're just mistaken, and you can go back to Sportsnet if you want to get the old guys' opinions, the insiders. I'm just a guy with an opinion and having some fun.
So good. So start us off, Parker. Regardless of if you knew at 9 a.m. or if you knew at 7 p.m. What's your first overall take on this roster, which I think you and I and everyone knows is not. This isn't going to be the October 15th opening night roster. We know that for sure.
It's not as good as it could have been. It depends. I from looking at that, I couldn't tell what their overall goal was, right? If they had gone out and taken Eberle, Domi, Giordano, Tarasenko, Dadonov. Like, you would look at that and be like, all right, they want to win now. Like, they're coming out. And I think that would have been a fair thing for them to do, right? This Pacific Division clearly is struggling. If there's ever going to be a window, this might be it. And when you do have the ability to pull some real good pieces together, maybe a chip on their shoulder like we saw in Vegas, then they'd have a shot. But or they could have gone the opposite route. They could have picked a bunch of 23-year-old guys, a bunch of RFAs, gone straight for value and tried to flip for draft picks because they have no prospect pool right now. Try to build that up and build a good organization. But they kind of took the middle ground, right? They took guys like Mark Giordano and they took guys like Jordan Eberle. But then they made some other interesting decisions where they didn't necessarily take the best player available. I can't even remember his name. There's one guy who Gavin something. I've never heard of his name before. A bunch of players like that where I'm like, who?
Gavin Bayreuther.
Can you repeat that?
Gavin Bayreuther from Columbus, defenseman.
Bayreuther, yeah. Yeah, I've never heard of that guy before, and going with guys like Alex True out of San Jose or Carson Twerinski out of Philadelphia. Like, to me, JVR was a slam dunk pick out of Philadelphia because he's going to put up 60 points. You can have him on your first line. His contract's not too unreasonable, like $7 million bucks. But they go with Carson Twerinski and Tyler Pitlick and Nathan Bastian, and it's a bunch of guys where it doesn't make a ton of sense because you put that with the Yanni Gourds, Jared McCanns, and it's like, okay, well, what is your goal here? And right now, I think they've sort of put together a probably middle of the road team with $30 million of cap space left. And that was kind of clear that was their goal, was let's get some good pieces, but let's not get greedy on good pieces. Let's have some cap space. Let's attack with this flat cap world. Let's see if we can exploit some teams with this cap space we might have, maybe bring some more assets in, and then use that space in free agency to maybe try to round out this roster that we've put together.
No, I love what you said, Parker. When I look at this roster, there's a few guys up front that have a bit of name cachet, I guess, Yanni Gourde and Jordan Eberle, but there's no one that gets me really excited, right? And then when you have Brandon Tanev as your third or fourth highest paid forward, that's kind of weird. Their D, I don't mind a top four. Granted, they got to sign all these guys, but I don't mind a top four of Giordano, of Larson, of Dunn, and I'm missing one guy. Who's there? Fleury and Alexiak. So maybe 4 or 5 guys, right?
Right.
And then goaltending is the interesting one because they only have $5 million, right? 3.5, and then 750. They only have $5 million in 3 guys, and whether or not those are 3 guys they start with, that's really fascinating.
Right, and the whole Carey Price thing was a wild saga there too, where we saw that, and everyone was like, they're going to take Carey Price because it's going to be awesome, and they're going to have a really good team, and it's like, no, because he's literally put up like a 900 the last 3 regular seasons. This isn't a safe bet. This isn't a smart bet. Don't take Carey Price, and they make some smart moves. They go after a young goalie in Chris Driedger, who, in his 2 abbreviated seasons that he's played some games in, he's been very good, right? Like, he's been a really solid goalie, and albeit he's only played like 40 NHL games, but even if he drops down to like a 9-10 save percentage as a top 50% starting goalie in the NHL, you're laughing on a $3.5 million cap hit, right? Vitek Vanacek, again, another unproven guy who's very cheap, but he showed some promise in those games where he was filling in for Samsonov in Washington. The Joey Decord pick threw me off a little bit because I think everyone had already set in stone that it was going to be Kaapo Kähkönen from Minnesota. But I guess they wanted Carson Soucy, and then that prevented them from getting Dadonov from Ottawa, which is sort of what I thought would happen. But I honestly, I like the moves in net. I think paying you have 3 goalies who are unproven, and you only need one of them to end up being good, really, to be a starter, right? You have 3 probably decent chance lottery tickets, and that's instead of going with a Braden Holtby, who would have cost almost as much as all 3 of them combined and hasn't been good, or Carey Price, who hasn't been good in the regular season and would have cost double what all 3 of them combined are for the next 5 years. So I really like what they did in goal.
Yeah. Now, I admit, I don't know. I'm not an expert on all the guys on all the teams. Like, you asked me to name 3rd and 4th liners from every team. Not so good. third pairing D-men. But there's some guys who either I've never heard of, or I can't say their names, or a combination of both. Like I was actually doubting my own hockey knowledge when I saw some of these names.
Right. It's like, have I been living under a rock? Like who's Nathan Bastian?
Yes.
Who's
yes.
William Borgen?
And Curtis McDermott is not a household name, maybe in his own house. I shouldn't say that.
Yeah. And like, it was so funny to me, like the sort of just the weird brain discrepancy in my head. It's like they're bringing out the legendary championship winning head coach of the Seattle Supersonics to announce William Borgen from the Buffalo Sabres. And it was like, Kate, you couldn't have like given him like Eberle or even like a Donskoy or something. Like it was funny to me that and like all the guys trying to pronounce these weird names like
okay. So did you like
and...
Sean Kemp doing Donskoy, or did you like Marshawn Lynch trying to do, I can't even say it.
Calle Yarncroke.
Yeah.
I love Marshawn so much. He was just like my boy Callie, and I was like, yes, I love it. I will never hate on anything Marshawn Lynch ever does.
I was joking around in my stream about what was worse, Sean Kemp trying to say Donskoy or Stan Smeel trying to say Podkolzin.
Yeah, no, it was like he said like what, Jonas Donskey or something like that. Like,
but he said Donskey. Yeah, it was just
it was great.
And Sean Kemp's put on a few pounds, eh?
A few of those guys have, yeah.
Yeah, I shouldn't talk, but
yeah, and I mean, so yeah, a lot of surprising picks, and I mean, we haven't even really talked since the lists were published, but I mean, guys like Mark Giordano being available, kind of a surprise, and an absolute slam dunk pick, I think, for the Kraken. I mean, you're bringing in a guy, and this was one of those things where at first glance, it's like, well, they brought in all these young guys, and they brought in Giordano, who's like on the tail end of his career, but he's on an expiring contract. He's an excellent leader, clearly. He was the captain of the Flames, and he still has value. So if Seattle puts a good run together and they're competing for a playoff spot, Giordano's a great piece. If they aren't competing for a playoff spot come February and the trade deadline comes around, well, you can probably fetch a good haul for a Mark Giordano right before the playoffs. So that was one of the obvious picks, and they didn't mess that one up, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. And did you read anything into the six guys that were actually there? Hayden Fleury, Mark Giordano, Jamie Oleksiak, Chris Driedger, Jordan Eberle, and Brandon Tanev. Because obviously you wouldn't spend the time, money, expense to fly them in if you're not going to re-sign them or not going to sign them if they're UFA. You know, did you read anything to that, or do you think anything can happen and they were the guys that were able to be there?
Yeah, I didn't read too much into it.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think it was probably just those were I think they knew they needed to have some faces there. Right,
sure.
To be like, look, we actually have players, right? But I don't think there was too much. I think it was like either guys who are already fairly close to the area, or picks that they kind of knew as of Sunday, and they're like, hey, we're not changing this one. Let's call the guy and see if he can fly out here. And I think,
and with a bit of name recognition, of course, too.
Right.
You bring up Curtis McDermott and
right, and like Giordano, like they probably knew they were going to pick him come Sunday. But maybe a guy like Kole Lind, you wouldn't want to bring down, because you might not have known that you were taking Kole Lind until 7 a.m. this morning, because you might have been, mixing up with some other options. So I think those are probably just some of the more solid picks. Because you imagine you get the call to come down, and then the next day, like, actually, no, we changed our mind. Sorry, can you go back?
Well, we could talk about that Pike Place fish story in a second. Can you put up Moritz's comment, though? Is that cool?
Sure, I can pull that up here.
Because we're grateful for everyone that are here, whether you're Hot Take Hockey, the legend himself, even though he calls us legends, here from Toronto, or from Austria. Good morning from Austria, guys. What a shame it all got spoiled. Yeah, we were just talking about that. Really excited about the upcoming rivalry. Moritz, thank you for being here. That is awesome.
Yeah, super cool whenever we get the international crowd in on here, because, I mean, you look at our stats, and it's like 70% Canada, most of the rest of the U.S., which is probably like Washington area, and then you get the occasional, the Australias, the Austrias, the Germanys, like all these weird little, or not weird places, but like weird that there's people listening from that far away. So very, very cool to see. So thank you, Moritz, and thank you everyone listening as always. Can
I spend 2 minutes or a minute and a half on this fish story?
Absolutely.
Okay, so everyone, you guys might have seen this. Someone was filming, was there when ESPN was filming the Toronto Maple Leafs pick. So it was all the guys in Seattle's, what's it called? Is it called Yeah, Pike Place, and that famous place where they chuck fish around and they yell and they get all excited. So they filmed one, and one guy filmed it, and it was them picking Alex Kerfoot. This guy posts it on Twitter, and then I'll get to the backstory in a second, and then everyone say, okay, I guess they're picking Kerfoot. Seattle Kraken, the official Twitter account, they reply saying, or maybe this is one of the 5 or 6 that we filmed. Some people back the Kraken, others say, oh no, they're trying to save face. Then it comes out that this guy actually, he said they only filmed one take, i.e. only talked about Kerfoot. But then he asked, a DM came out where he actually said to the Seattle Kraken, send me a jersey or I'm going to go public with this post.
And then it was funny because there was another post this morning from a different angle of someone recording the Jared McCann take, which was excellent. And I mean, I saw that yesterday, and I was like, well, one, like, yeah, they might have selected, like, they might have it locked in who they're going to pick, but they're going to, like, while they're there, they're going to just do a couple names just in case, right?
Yes.
Like, I'm like, look, this is a team that was just purchased for $650 million. They're not going to just do one take and then panic if Ron Francis changes his mind at 7 a.m. this morning, right? So it was like the whole time I'm like, one, I don't think Kerfoot's the right pick because I think McCann's a better pick, and two, there's no way they're not doing more than one take. But that was definitely a very funny sequence of events. Yeah.
So all to say, it wasn't the Jared McCann who, as many people pointed out, never even put on a Toronto Maple Leafs uniform. So if John's still in here, I'm wondering if he was disappointed at all. John, if you're still in here, leave a comment then. Do you care? Were you happy with the pick that it was McCann, not Kerfoot? We'd love to hear from a Toronto Maple Leafs vlogger, fan, superstar perspective.
Absolutely. And of course, this is Canucks After Dark. So let's talk about the one pick that did come from Vancouver, not the highest profile pick on this roster by any means, probably close to the bottom of the list. But Seattle does take Kole Lind from the Vancouver Canucks. Were you surprised? What was your initial reaction?
Yeah. Was I surprised? No, I had narrowed it down to, and just who am I, but from what I'd heard to Lind, Holtby, and McEwen. Then I think McEwen fell off. So it was really Lind or Holtby. And so I think it could have gone either way, but and there's supposedly some other teams that are in on Holtby. Of course, it'd be nice if Seattle took him full and then no salary retention, but we will see what happens. Obviously, Kole Lind becomes expendable, or at least has to be exposed because of the trade for Jason Dickinson. I know we'll get into that too. So all to say, Parker, no, I wasn't surprised. I'm not going to pile on him just because he didn't work out here, or at least he didn't get a chance to work out here. He's only 22 years old, second round pick in the Pettersson year. But in the 7 games here was just okay. They're mean-nothing games, but maybe didn't do enough to impress the brass. I don't know.
Yeah, so for those of you who weren't following sort of too closely on the Twitter sphere the last couple of days, the rumor was that it was looking like it was going to be Holtby because it looked like the Canucks were trying to do something to make that happen. From the Seattle side, picking Holtby didn't really make sense, right? Mm-hmm. It was basically confirmed that they were going to be signing Chris Driedger. The only real scenario that taking Holtby would have made sense would be if the Canucks took some salary and then they flipped him or something like that. And it looks like since basically no side deals were made, none of that panned out. And I think Seattle made the smart choice when it really came down to, I mean, clearly they were prioritizing cap space in this expansion draft. So your 3 options were Lind, who makes nothing, Gadjevich, who makes nothing, and Zach McEwen, who makes nothing. 3 guys who have 100% contracts that you can just throw in the AHL and never think about again. So when you're looking at those 3 guys, and I think I said this last week, where Zach McEwen is kind of a known quantity, and he's a guy who can bring energy to your 4th line, although this year he wasn't very good at all. But at the end of the day, he's probably a guy who you can have as your 13th forward or flip back and forth between the AHL and NHL as a 4th line sort of energy guy who can bring some physicality. Jonah Gadjevich, probably going to be a higher floor than a Kole Lind, because I could see Gadjevich sort of, sticking on like a 4th line somewhere, again, just being sort of a bigger physical guy who can work in the corners. But I think Kole Lind, because if you're Seattle, you can get as many of these 3rd, 4th line guys. That's basically all the expansion draft is, right? It's a bunch of 3rd or 4th line guys. So you don't need another guy whose ceiling is like a 3rd or 4th line guy. Kole Lind gives you that chance to, even if it's a slim chance, he might end up being a low-end 2nd line player or maybe a good guy on a scoring 3rd line. Although there might be a better chance that he doesn't make it at all.
Yes.
So I think if you're Seattle, that's probably the safe pick. And again, it's 100% of a contract that you can completely get out of, and there's no risk taking it on.
Yes, and I think, I remember Parker going to like these summer training camp events, and when I saw Lind, I was and this was 3 or 4 years ago, right? I was quite impressed, maybe 3 years ago, because he's not the biggest guy ever, but he's got decent size, and he looked like a man compared to some of the other guys he was playing with. I thought he had a really good first period that I think he was lined up with Horvat and Pearson, if I'm not mistaken, or he had a really good first game, and then he kind of tailed off. Then you're wondering, well, is he another one of these Highmore, Harlock, VC Boyd type guys who just kind of nondescript, right? So obviously the Jason Dickinson trade sealed his fate that way. So I'm not rooting against him because he didn't work out here or because he's playing for Seattle. I'm not rooting for him necessarily. But you never know with him. But you make a good point. He's an RFA. They might not. I understand he does need waivers. If they sign him, he will need waivers to clear waivers before. So they have to make a decision on him. Is my point, I guess.
Right, and I mean we saw him for 7 games basically at the end of the season and didn't do much. I mean they showed the graphic for Kole Lind on the screen. And it was, every player and a lot of the players, it was like in their 36 NHL games, they had 11 points or whatever. But for Kole Lind, it was like average 13:06 time on ice in 7 NHL games. Like that was the stat. That was all they had for him. It was like, yep, he played hockey a little bit.
Yeah. Yes.
And that was all they could put up because that was really all that happened. He didn't really have an impact in those 7 games. Look, getting your feet under you in the NHL, obviously not an easy thing to do. But I think the Canucks sort of saw, look, maybe he's not, they were able to see, all right, he is not for sure going to make it, right? Like like he didn't come in, blow the doors off, put up 4 points in 7 games and be a real fixture out there. They saw, you know what? He's not 100% locked to make it. He's probably, a safe one to let go. And for Seattle, there's still some potential there. So it looks like it makes sense all around.
Awesome. So good segue. Before we get into the hottest segment, Sweeping the Nation, that we actually forgot to do last week, what were your thoughts when you first heard that the Canucks acquired Jason Dickinson from the Dallas Stars?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought, because I was on the golf course and it's after 12 because 12 o'clock was the cutoff, and then I see Canucks. I was like, there's a move coming. For the Canucks, a useful piece, said Thomas Strantz.
Yes.
And so I'm there and I'm just refreshing. Just refresh every 3 seconds. I'm like, come on.
In between shots.
In between shots, yeah. And then I go up, take my shot, and I keep refreshing. And it takes like 20 minutes before any actual information comes out about it. And then it comes out that it's Jason Dickinson going to Vancouver. And that's the first piece of news that comes out.
Yes.
And my first thought is, I think I know who that is. That's a name I've heard before. And I go up and I pull up his stats. I'm like, oh, all right, decent stats, third liner probably. And then I look at the analytics and I see that defensive number. I'm like, oh, this guy's a shutdown center. All right, that's fine. And the return comes in, a 3rd round pick. Who cares? Right? A 3rd round pick. I mean, we get excited about 3rd round picks all the time, right? They come through and right after the draft happens on Friday or on Saturday after, the Canucks make some selections, we're going to look at the Canucks 4th round pick and be like, well, maybe this will happen. But they rarely do, right? So at the end of the day, 3rd round pick, you're basically giving up nothing. And in return, you're getting a young, restricted free agent who is an elite shutdown center, right? Can't do much offensively, but you throw him out there on the penalty kill, you throw him out there in a defensive situation, and he does a good job. And that's something that the Canucks kind of lack, right? They kind of had 2 guys who were supposed to do that in Jay Beagle, Brandon Sutter.
I knew you were going there.
But, I mean, at the end of the day, like they were kind of just out there, it felt like. So I think it's a good piece. My one worry is it does kind of go against the 3 scoring lines philosophy because that's not going to happen. But I mean, the Canucks didn't really have the personnel to make that happen anyways. Yeah.
And in theory, if you're giving Jason Dickinson some of the shutdown roles that Horvat has been forced to play, then maybe you are freeing Bo up to worry not so much about defense, not so much about shutting down, but rather being the good offensive player that he is. It's so funny that you mentioned that you're golfing on Saturday and you're checking because I had a similar experience, and it even includes golf. Saturday morning, as you know, I bowl with my boys. So it's 12 o'clock. We're packing up and I see the same tweets and I'm refreshing. So then I had to go to Golf Town just to get my driver re-gripped. And as I'm pulling into the parking lot, I see the actual the confirmation, and Jacob's with me. So I just forget it, Jake, just sit here. And I didn't even know anything about him, right? To be honest, I just pressed record. I said, Jake, look up his stats on your phone.
Nice.
And we were going blind, and it pretty much showed. And then I remembered afterwards or during that he was the guy that was standing there with Bo Horvat with Ryan Reeves during the Black Lives Matter press conference. He was the one kneeling with Tyler Seguin, Robin Leonard, and Ryan Reeves during that round robin game. So you can tell he's a leader. He's not afraid to stand up for what he believes in. And I love what you said. He's kind of going to do what we hope Brandon Sutter did, yet he's cheaper and he's younger. So those are two good things in my book.
Yeah, and I mean, you're looking at a guy who's, never played 82 games in a season, but like 22 points in 67 games, 21 points in 65 games. That's kind of his pace, right? So just under a 30-point player, 28 points, maybe something like that over the course of a season. On your third line, that's totally fine. Totally fine. Want production.
Exactly.
And if you can do that and then be one of the top 10% on the defensive side, that's excellent. You're also then bringing a guy with excellent character, as you just said, clearly into the locker room, which can't hurt. A guy who has led the charge on social issues and has clearly a good relationship with some guys in the room. Says all the right things. He had his interview after where he was talking about how he was rooting for the Canucks back in 2011, and he models his game like he saw Ryan Kessler out there and he wanted to be like that. Saying all the right things, and I'm excited for him to come to Vancouver for sure.
That is awesome. So yes, I think I am fine with a lineup down the middle of Pettersson, Horvat, Dickinson, and Beagle for one more year for Beagle at least. And then, he takes Sutter's penalty killing. So you have Mott, Beagle, Dickinson, and someone as your penalty killers, whether it's a Highmore, a Pearson, Miller's done that as well, or someone new. He's going to play a prominent role, and it sounds like he's up for the challenge. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm not going to buy his jersey, Parker, mind you, but I am looking forward to seeing him play for sure. Yeah,
I think the only real downside that we saw was faceoffs. I think he's in like 45, 47%, something like that. Which, look, I think faceoffs are overrated normally, unless you're a penalty killer. I think that's one of the times where, because winning a faceoff on the penalty kill means that you take 15, 20 seconds off the power play immediately, right?
Yes.
So that might be a scenario where Horvat comes on for a draw, wins it, gets off as it gets cleared, and then they rotate onto a power play. So I mean, at the end of the day, you might be looking at taking 3 minutes of penalty killing away from Bo Horvat a game. And just, like you said, just putting that into offense, right? Saying, all right, now we can give you more time on the power play, on offensive zone starts when we actually have a chance to score. And I think having a third line that you can reliably put out there and not get killed against opens up more opportunity to be a little more greedy with your offensive zone starts, right? You don't have to put Horvat out in your defensive zone every time if you have a guy if you have a good third line that can, take the puck away, get possession, get it down the ice, get off the ice. So that allows you to put Pettersson out there in more offensive situations, put Horvat out there in more offensive situations, and hopefully just have the puck more often.
Yes, well said. And while we load up are you okay, Parker, if we do our call out for our Don't Do That's now? All right, so spend a minute or so, everyone. Give us your best Don't Do That's. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to answer Shannon. Shannon, I know you're camping this weekend, so you didn't hear that, we traded for this wonderful young player, this young player from the Dallas Stars named Jason Dickinson, and we will see how well he does.
I think he's wonderful.
Okay, he's wonderful. You typed that so quickly. Send in your Don't Do That's. Oh, I see a couple already. Go for it.
Oh, man, I got to have the comments up, hey? It says, underestimating the power of the Kraken. Don't do that. So, I mean, we all underestimated Vegas when their roster came out because, I mean, it didn't look very good, right? Yep. We didn't think these guys like Riley Smith and we didn't think William Karlsson was going to go score 41 goals. So we don't know who that might be, if that was a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Definitely don't want to underestimate them, though, because I think they could be a sneaky dark horse this year.
Yeah. And you guys know that Parker, he controls all the tech, so I'm going to let him put up one, and I just got to react to it. So Parker, choose one, and I'll just go. No, oh, that's an easy one. Fangirl, not subscribing to Canucks After Dark. Don't, of course. So thank you for the reminder, Fangirl. Please, while you're here, if you haven't subscribed already, hit that button and also like the video while you're here. We appreciate you very much.
Absolutely. Now, I got one I disagree with. This is Agam saying, booking a hotel the second the opening game is announced. Don't do that. But why not? I got to get there before all the hotels are taken up. There's a Seahawks game that weekend on the Monday, too. There's going to be some demand. I got to get in there quickly.
I like that. And you said you had free cancellation, right? Just in case you don't.
It's free cancellation up until the Friday. I'm good.
Which I was going to ask you. I forgot because I forgot. Would you consider buying on the secondary market, or are you only going to go if you buy tickets like legit, firsthand?
Depends on the price.
Okay.
It's all going to come down to the price. I'll give this one to you.
All right. From Lucas, pick Morgan Geekie over Jake Bean. Don't do that. You know what's funny, Lucas, is my son Sean came down. He was going out for dinner, and that was the one pick he saw. And we both didn't know who Morgan Geekie is. Of course, my 19-year-old son Sean, who's way less mature than Parker, has made fun of Morgan's last name, of course. And then, but Jake Bean, young 23-year-old defender, cheap, great potential. I was surprised, but Parker, maybe they got something else in mind. I was
very surprised because Jake Bean, he's like 23.
Yeah,
he looks like he might have like 3-4 upside, right? And that's something that you just take if it comes to you, right? Like they did it with Vince Dunn, right?
Yeah,
Vince Dunn was that sort of same idea where it's like, okay, this is a guy who will probably be a top 4 defenseman. You lock those up if you can because that's just good value. I'm gonna skip over time for hockeys because I do have that on our list of topics.
Okay, good.
We'll get to that.
Let's do one more. You choose.
I'll give you this one.
I'm so giggly tonight. Pronouncing names wrong or incorrectly during the expansion draft. Don't do that. Well, I think I went about 25 for 30, i.e. 25 wrong.
It was surprising to me that they didn't give him a little pre-warm up. Hey, by the way, this guy's name is Calle Yarncrook. All right, let's do a little dress rehearsal.
Yeah,
Calle Yarncrook. Right, that's all they had to do. And on the same vein, Justin saying Carolina Panthers instead of Hurricanes. Don't do that.
Who did that?
I don't remember exactly who it was, but it did happen. And the Carolina Panthers social media team ran with it. They started they changed their social media logo to the Hurricanes logo with Panthers colors. The Hurricanes started selling Carolina Panthers merch, doing a bunch of stuff like that. So,
by the way, that one about Inferno pronouncing names wrong, I realize now he's talking about Sean Kemp and Marshall. I thought he was talking about me.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Great suggestions, everyone. Great submissions. Parker and I, even if we don't get to read them on air, we do go back and see them. So thanks for your creativity. What's next? I know we got a lot more.
We got a bit more Canucks news to fire through. Let's get out of the Canucks weeds a little bit here. First one, Tyler Graovac to sign overseas. This came a few days ago. I honestly really like Tyler Graovac this year. I thought he showed some flashes, but I guess the Canucks didn't see the same thing. He thought he wouldn't have a spot in the NHL, so he's gone. Next, Alex Edler. This one's a little bigger. Alex Edler, test free agency. Now, this sort of headline came around last year as well, and then the Canucks, or not last year, 2 years ago, and then they ended up signing him $6 million for 2 years.
Yeah.
But this one feels different. It looks like this might actually be the end.
Yes, and I think this really came to a head around trade deadline time, Parker, right? Because you always want to try and monetize your UFAs if you don't think you're going to re-sign them. Whether the Canucks thought they had a chance to sign him, and they still do, or whether they wanted to respect Alex Edler and not even have him worry about having to move for 2 months, right? Yes, this is where we're at now. And his it was funny, man. His agent was on the Donnie Dolly show, and he says Canucks. Alex Edler is going to move on from the Canucks. And then he started every answer. This is so funny. This is kind of bad because I have my own word whiskers. But everything that Mark Stowe, every answer started off with, well. So, Mark, what do you think about Alex Edler looking at others? Well, I shouldn't be making fun. It was just really funny.
Yeah.
Alex Edler, there's nothing to say that the Canucks can't loop back to him. But obviously there's a risk there because money's going to dry up. We saw that last year. Well, that's why Hamnick's sitting there signing for under $1.5 million after basically right before the season starts. Yeah, you're right, Parker. This does feel different, and because there's no breakdown in negotiations, there's no bad feelings. It's Alex Edler proactively saying, "I probably have 2-3 years max left. I'm going to look for a winning team," and I don't blame him.
Yeah, I don't either. I would 100% be in the same boat, but it's one of those things where, people say there was the whole like winning culture conversation the last few years, right?
Yeah.
And I think Thomas Drance said it on the Vancast where it was like, look, this is one of those things that this is a direct consequence of being a bad team and having a bunch of bad things happen around the organization this year, right? A bunch of bad stuff happened around the Canucks this year, right? So, if you're Alex Edler, you might be thinking, you know what? I'm ready. I'm ready to move on now. And I think that's, it sort of came to a head, and that's how it ends up. So the end of the Alex Edler era, 99 goals in a Vancouver Canucks uniform, and it will be poetry when he scores his 100th at Rogers Arena against the Vancouver Canucks. I will cheer. I will cheer if that happens. You would.
I'd be smiling. I don't know if I'd be smiling out of joy or in pain, but yes, I would be smiling. There's one thing last thing I was going to ask you about Edler. It has nothing to do with the fact that the Sedins came, but it's almost ironic, right? That he's the one holdover, the one guy that was really close to them, but obviously this was probably in the cards for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't think bringing the Sedins back was going to be too much of an impact on that. This is a good comment from Infernal.
Infernal, that's good. You got both of them. Well, you're watching Canucks After Dark.
Perfect.
I'm
all
too
right.
giggly tonight. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's. I think that's all the Canucks stuff, right? Did anything else happen with the Canucks this week? I think that was.
No, Edler and Dickinson, I think, are the biggest ones. I guess the one thing I could ask you, even if you don't have a graphic for it, but I would love to ask you if you think Holtby's going to be moved.
I think so. That's just like, again, I'm not an insider. I feel like there's been so much talk around this happening that I feel like it just might. I'm not 100%. I'm not even 70%. I'm probably like 55-45. But I don't know who would take him. And if the thing is that the Canucks aren't willing to retain salary, that's like, okay, well then you're not going to get anything for him, right? I mean, unless you're giving up assets like we saw the Islanders do with Ladd just a few days ago. I don't think if they're not willing to retain salary, then I don't think so. And I think you're fine going into this year with the Demko-Holtby tandem. Just from a goaltender standpoint, even though on the cap, we're talking about over $9 million dedicated to your goaltending. Actually, over $12 million dedicated to your goaltending when you take Roberto Luongo into account.
That's a good point. And then we'll end with this one, then we can go whatever you have the next banner. I guess the other way to free up money, two ways. There's a buyout of Jake Virtanen potentially, and there's also this whole Nate Schmidt saga, which depending on who you listen to, depending which way the wind is blowing. I like Schmidt, and if you're going to trade him away, you need a top 4 defenseman back. Why not it be this guy? I get it, it's $6 million. If you can find a guy for $3 million, that's very important money. But I don't know. I just think he didn't. It's not like he didn't get a fair shake, but I would love to see him get one more chance. But if he's the one that's driving this, maybe he doesn't want to be here anymore. It's so tough to say.
That is fair. While we're here, before we get into the next topic, I do want to alert everyone. Look, we do shows every week, but this week we got 2. Tomorrow, not on Friday night. It's the NHL draft, at least the first round. The second, or I think the second round second through 7th goes on Saturday. But on Friday night, the Canucks pick 9th overall. And we will be live at 10 p.m. to discuss it. I'm sure we'll both be live for the draft itself. So if you don't care about the Sportsnet feed, you want to watch one of us instead, you can of course do that. But if you want both of our takes after the fact, once we've had some time to digest and do a little more research, we'll be live here at 10 p.m. So make sure you're subscribed. And if you're listening to the podcast, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast as well.
Awesome. Watch us at 5 for our visceral, spontaneous reactions. Watch us at 10 for once we've actually had a chance to think about things.
Our calm, cool, and collected researched opinions after that.
There you go.
I want to talk a little bit about a division rival to the Vancouver Canucks who have had a terrible week. That's the Edmonton Oilers. A bunch of I don't know what to say. Ken Holland is making interesting moves for the Edmonton Oilers. The first thing that happens, Adam Larson goes to Seattle on a pretty cheap contract, 4 years, $4 million per, pretty reasonable, especially since they gave Alexiak like $23 million. But look, Adam Larson going to Seattle, so they lose one of their top 4 defensemen. Yeah, that sucks for them.
Right shot D-man, 28 years old. I think Chris Tanev got 4 times 4.5 to their Alberta rival. So that's one that got away for sure. And I know you don't worry about what happened 4 years ago, but remember, he got traded for Taylor Hall.
One for
pretty
one.
Big. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then another thing that happened is the rumors are that Mike Smith is going to be re-signing on a multi-year deal, was the quote that came out. A 38-year-old goalie who is clearly on the decline. And Ken Holland says, you know what, we're going to sign this guy for not 1, but 2 years. Because I guess we can't get people to stick around. And then now the rumor is Zach Hyman was in Edmonton today to meet with the brass of the Oilers, and now there's rumors of either a 6 or 7 year deal, and the Canucks were sort of in on this with Calgary a few days ago, and I made a video saying, don't do that. Don't sign Zach Hyman. That's way too much money. Way too much term. Money was fine. Way too much term for a guy who's already 29 years old. But the rumor is that Edmonton might be willing to do a sign-in trade so that Hyman can get his 8th year of his contract by signing with the Leafs before getting traded. If not, 6 or 7 years at $5 million plus for a 29-year-old middle 6 forward.
Who's now not injury prone, but has been, susceptible to a couple of injuries. One thanks to one of our guys, Alex Edler.
Former guy.
Yeah, great point. I should pay more attention. Yeah, this is crazy. So, wow. Okay, Larson we talked about. Mike Smith, not impressed by him. Sure, he's a decent puck handler. He's got good size, but he's old. He's getting old. And then, of course, the Zach Hyman thing, that's nuts. And even if McDavid wants someone to play with, can Hyman – maybe for 1, 2, 3 years? Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all.
And the other rumor is now they're circling back on Tyson Barrie because Larson left. And it's like, again, you're just like digging deeper and deeper in this hole.
Well, this is the same team that got Duncan Keith, right?
Oh, I forgot to put Duncan Keith on here as well on this list. Man, trading for the rest of Duncan Keith's contract. Like, I don't know what they're doing. It doesn't make sense. The Zach Hyman one, though, is, I mean, you look at the comparables to this much money, right? Let's call it 6 years at $5 million. Well, sure. Louis Eriksson was coming off of a 30-goal season when the Canucks signed him to a 6x6. You looked at that one when it happened. You said, it might suck in the last 2 or 3 years, but he's going to be a really good player to start the contract. He wasn't. Yes. He just took a dive off of a cliff. Zach Hyman, I mean, he doesn't have that cachet that Louis Eriksson did. He hasn't scored 30 goals in a season. It doesn't make any sense to commit potentially $30 to $40 million to a guy who is at best a second line player.
Yes. Can you put Edmund's comment up, please?
I can try. I mean, man, if you're Edmonton and you finally got rid of Peter Chiarelli. Yeah. He finally left, and now it's like, all right, here's Ken Holland. Have fun with this guy, because he's not going to help you much either. It looked like he was doing well the first couple of weeks when he got brought in, but all these moves are just kind of crazy.
Who did Edmonton lose today? Oh yeah, Larson. What are we talking about? Larson. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's rough. That's a rough look.
That is.
I see some people saying they don't mind it. Obviously, as a division rival, but
it's great for all these things are great for us as Canucks fans. However, we are throwing stones from a glass house at this point, because it is we can laugh all we want, but sometimes our own leader throws us under the bus a little bit.
So Parker, imagine this: before Edmonton went a little bit crazy the last 2 weeks, if someone was going to ask me, "Hey Clay, give me your early predictions for the Pacific Division next year," right? I would have said Vegas and Edmonton for me are 1-2. I would have said Calgary, Vancouver, Seattle, and LA would fight those 4 teams for the 3rd and 4th playoff spots. And then I see Anaheim and San Jose being a little bit further down. But I know Seattle's roster is not set, but that wasn't very impressive. Edmonton's in shambles. I hate Calgary, so I don't know. Does Vancouver have a fighter's chance at making maybe even that's way too early to say, but I like it.
I think the Canucks do have a reasonable chance of being top 3 in this division if they can return to form a little bit. And last year was a bit of a fluke. But it also, I mean, it's way too early for me to count out the Kraken, just because again, they still have $30 million to spend. Edmonton has just handcuffed themselves contract wise to the point where I don't see how they're going to be any better next year. It just doesn't add up for me.
Yeah. Fair enough.
All right. We got about 10 minutes left. So I wanted to do a couple more topics. One of them is maybe not a Hughes comparable, but sort of the similar level, similar age. And that is Miro Heiskanen getting paid 8-year extension from the Dallas Stars on his birthday at $8.45 million per year. That is a lot of money to pay a young defenseman, but it could end up being a good deal in the long run.
Fair to say that as much as we were talking about Heiskanen, Makar, Hughes, and Dahlin all negotiating as a block, all getting similar contracts, we know that Hughes is not getting this much money and especially this much term just yet because we simply can't afford to do that right now. Cale Makar hit arguably the best season of the three of them. Heiskanen was great in the playoffs last year. Yeah, exactly. So I think we're going to start to see some separation, but it's so to me, Parker, this is good news and it's a good news topic, but I don't know actually. I see less and less the connection now, actually. And
absolutely. I think it's just age is the only comparison. And it's like, oh, good defenseman, that is this age.
Sure.
But I mean, Heiskanen has shown that he is going to be a star in this league. Literally, I guess. He does play for Dallas. And he is going to be, Dallas's number one defenseman for a while, in my opinion. Cale Makar is going to be Colorado's number one defenseman forever. Quinn Hughes is probably going to be Vancouver's number one defenseman, maybe just at a slightly lower tier, at least for right now. So I think this sort of sets not a ceiling, but like a ceiling plus $1 million maybe, or a ceiling plus a bit, right? Because I think you look at this and say, okay, well, Hughes isn't going to get that close to this, right? And it can't be that close to this. But, I mean, even though it probably is going to be a bridge anyways, that this isn't super relevant, I just thought it was sort of an interesting topic.
And in the comments, Nuxus49 says, Friedman said that Cale Makar will make way more than what Miro made. So I don't know, Parker. Have you heard much about whether he's trying to go bridge versus long-term? I don't know. So
I haven't heard either, but if I'm Cale Makar, I'm asking for 8 digits at this point. I'm saying, look, Heiskanen is making 8 by 8.45. I was a finalist for the Norris this year. And I was I was literally a top 3 defenseman in the entire world this year. You're paying me 10 minimum. And he would have every right to ask for that, in my opinion.
Wow. Will be interesting to see what happens.
Absolutely. And then I guess, we literally said 2 nights from now, Friday night, NHL draft.
We haven't talked about it yet.
This is in 2 days from now. We've been so caught up with the expansion draft and sort of the big roster freeze, little trade frenzy that we're 2 days away from the draft, and we haven't really talked about it since the lottery, which I think was 6 weeks ago. That was our 9th episode. This is our 15th episode.
Wow.
So it's been a while. And those final rankings coming out today from Bob McKenzie, where I think he just pulls a bunch of scouts. Yeah,
and then does a conglomerate. Yes.
Yeah, and it looks like Owen Power staying at that number 1. But what is interesting is every single thing seems to keep centering on Kent Johnson being available at the number 9 spot.
Yeah, and you see the Province do an article about him. You see the Athletic do an article about him. It's kind of like people in this market, at least, are anticipating that he does fall to us at 9. And we've talked many times about how there's these 4 defensemen, these 5 forwards, that makes 9. You throw in a goalie or 2 that get picked above, or a random surprise pick, and the Canucks will have maybe 1 or 2 guys to choose from. But Ken Johnson, local, very speedy, Patrick Kane-like. In fact, people are talking about it. You can't go wrong with that. Is he the best pick? He might be the best available at 9.
Yeah, and I think I've sort of gotten attached to him at this point just because it's the name I keep seeing, and
Yeah.
the Pettersson comparable that he sort of threw out there, and everyone's saying he's trying to model his game after Pettersson, a great person to model a game after.
Wow.
Being a local kid, I think from Port Moody, so you got that connection, and I think it's sort of everything's adding up to it. And the best part is, if all of the rankings have him at number 9, and it. From what I can tell, it seems like the Canucks really like him, just based on all this news coverage around this one guy in particular. That has to come from somewhere, right? And it's probably from, one of the reporters around, like Dhaliwal or Drance or someone, getting sort of hints that that's sort of the direction they're leaning. And I think that might be their target, and everything sort of goes towards that. But him being sort of the 9th projected means that if he isn't available to the Canucks at 9, that means that someone higher on the list has dropped to them, which gets interesting, right? When we saw, whoever it was that the Canucks were projected to get in the Quinn Hughes year, and then Hughes dropped, and it was like, wait, this guy wasn't supposed to be here. Let's go, right? And so it could be the case of, a Brant Clark maybe dropping a few spots down the list, or a Luke Hughes making it down to the Canucks if New Jersey doesn't pick him up, or a Mason McTavish or something like that, right? It just takes a Barrett Hayton or a Jesperi Kotkaniemi to get thrown into the mix for these guys to become available farther down the line.
Yeah, and I think you'd agree. We know it's not going to be Owen Power. We know it's not going to be Matthew Beniers, but yeah, the names you mentioned, I've heard Clark, I've heard Hughes. And I haven't heard much of Gunther, Eklund, not even McTavish. So it might be we might be looking at a D-man potentially of Hughes or Clark.
Sure, definitely.
That's fine with me.
Definitely possible. Again, I think I heard that they're going to try to get a forward and a defenseman is sort of their goal in the first 2 rounds, right? Mm-hmm. So I think if you see the Canucks get a Kent Johnson type in the first round, maybe look for them to be maybe eyeing up the defensive side in the second. I think they pick 41st in the second round, which is still a good pick, right? 41st overall is definitely high enough to pick someone who will make a splash potentially in the NHL. So I think the Canucks have 2 really, really important picks, because these prospect cupboards are getting bare, right? As guys graduate, as guys get taken by the Seattle Kraken, as Podkolzin makes it into the NHL, Höglander's in the NHL, all these guys have already graduated, right? You're like, who's coming up? And it's like, okay, Podkolzin, but that's this year. After that, there's basically no one left on this list, right? Canucks didn't have a first-round pick next year. So to hopefully help to restock those cupboards, have guys, while you're in your competitive window, coming in on ELCs as supporting cast, super important these next couple of days.
Absolutely. No, it's good. I don't know if are you streaming Saturday? I know I'm not going to.
I don't think so.
I don't know. What am I going to talk about?
Yeah, I will not know a single name. The stream would be like, and the Canucks picked this guy. And I'm like, all right, let's type this into Google. All right, guys, he had 6 points in the Swedish league this year. That's it.
I'm with you. It's funny. I have a paper due that night, and I want to make sure I get to Canucks After Dark. So I'll give you a hint. No, not a hint. I mean, I might only stream the top 10 picks, honestly. Talk about the Canucks pick, and then I can send whoever's left to yours, and that'll be awesome. Yeah.
Perfect. I'll take it.
Okay, good.
I guess I'm doing the whole first round. Let's go. I will have the snacks ready.
Awesome.
And you guys can come hang out.
Perfect. Tag team.
Absolutely. So the draft coming up, I think we hit all of the topics I had listed here.
Awesome.
So a couple minutes to go. Feel free to throw a couple of questions at us if you guys want for the last 2 or so.
Put Edmonds up, if that's okay. Do you guys think a lot of trades will happen this Friday? I do. I don't think Seattle Kraken, as Parker mentioned, there's not a lot of buzz about side deals. And I think Ron Francis even come out and said teams are a lot smarter this time than they were 4 years ago. But I remember all these teams, including the Canucks, that were trying to get deals done before the roster freeze. Those talks still count for something. So they've made some leeway, I think. So I say yes.
Yeah, I think Friday will be interesting, especially because there was just a flurry of things that happened, right? It's not like teams have had, a month and a half to sit and wait on things to come through and then sort of talk themselves out of it, right?
Yeah,
we're going to have people reacting to today, right? And potentially tomorrow if anything happens. So it's going to be literally, all right, we've a bunch of stuff happened in the last 48 hours. We now have to adjust and adapt to this if we want to. There might be a bunch of teams saying, all right, now we might be the 5th best team in our division. What do we have to do to get into that top 4 or top 3? And I think the Canucks might be in that boat. So it will be interesting to see what's going on there.
Coming in hot and heavy, take your pick and go for it.
All right. Wow, I am slow to pick things up here.
Just random. Just close your eyes and click.
Close my eyes and pick. This is interesting from Jogue Paul. Why did the Kraken get more D than offensive guys?
You want to start?
Sure. And I think it comes down to value. And the Vegas did this too, where they said you have to pick something like 25 predetermined positions, or 26 predetermined positions, which means you get 4 extra. Right? You have to pick 14 forwards, 9 defensemen, 3 goalies, and then you have 4 more picks. And what Vegas did is they said, okay, we're going to take all 4 of those picks and we're going to take 1 position. And now we have a slight stranglehold on that position and we can trade those guys. We have the leverage. And I think Seattle did a similar thing. And it worked really well for Vegas, right? They were able to make some moves. They did get stuck, I think, with Jason Garrison. They weren't able to move that. They got stuck with his contract. And there was rumors that Seattle might try to do this with goalies, right? They might take Carey Price, Chris Driedger, Braden Holtby, Capo Kakinen, Vitek Vanacek, take all these guys. We now have 6 goalies, right? And there's a bunch of teams that need goalies, right? Toronto needs a goalie. Edmonton might need a goalie. There's all these teams that, their goaltending's weak. Well, maybe we can dish a Carey Price, a Braden Holtby at a premium and try to sort of corner the market on this one position. So I think that might have been the idea.
Nothing to add. You nailed it. That was perfect.
Great. Anyone you want to pick out here?
Yeah, give me any free agents you want the Canucks to sign. Because I've looked at this. We got to be realistic. I love to say, Ovechkin, but we got to be realistic about the money.
I would love that.
I looked at if possibly Edler and Hamnick are going. I've looked at Mike Riley, who is the young defenseman who went from Ottawa to Boston. I really like him. I've looked at Cody Ceci, a right shot defenseman who's still 26, 27. So those are the 2 guys that I think maybe. Well, they're due for raises, but they're not going to be like $4 or $5 million guys. It might be $2.5, $3 million. I've also looked at Brock McGinn, who can play both wings, a forward. Carolina still, right? I think
so. That sounds right.
Yeah. But all 3 of these guys between the ages of 25 and 30, so they're not super expensive. And I think those are the kind of guys we might have to be looking at. So those are 3 names that I'll throw out there now.
You know what? Landeskog?
I love them.
Yeah, I think the Canucks really have to work within a set few $1 million at the end of the day, right? So we're not going big game hunting. If you're the Canucks, you're looking at the sort of mid to low end options of like the Brock McGinns and guys like that. I haven't done too much research in who's available, but I mean, free agency is soon, right? Isn't that in a week? It's a week.
You got
today.
it. That's our next Wednesday show.
That's our next Wednesday show. Free agency day 1. So a ton of fun shows to keep track of here. So Friday night, our first show, or our first week doing 2 shows in a week. So Friday night after the first round of the NHL draft, and Wednesday night after day 1 of free agency, where we'll start to see what the Canucks are doing and start to maybe see what this roster might look like come October 12th when the season starts.
Absolutely. So to wrap up, Parker, I know you always give me one last word to add in. I'll say this proactively. This is what we've been waiting for. This is what we've been talking about for the past 2 months. This 1 week of madness actually started with a couple days earlier with the roster freeze, but we're day 1 down. Expansion draft. We have the free agent. We have the NHL draft and free agency. It's going to be good, and every team is shaping their future, but the Canucks almost. I wouldn't say the most of everyone, but certainly very important 7 to 10 days coming up. And I'm excited. I can't wait to chat about it and react to it with you. Remember, friends, we are not the insiders. We are good at reacting to what the insiders say.
Yep. And of course, we love all of your opinions. So make sure, if you're not already, make sure you're subscribed to the channel here on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Make sure you're subscribed everywhere. Follow us on Twitter, both of us. I'm at ParkersPucks. He's at Canuck Clay. Follow our YouTubes. We'll have videos up whenever anything interesting happens, usually. So make sure you're around for that. It is going to be a very, very exciting next 7 or 8 days, as it has been the last 4 days or so. So a lot of stuff for us to talk about. It is going to be action-packed, so make sure you stay tuned. Anyways, that's all we've got. It is the end of our show, and we'll see you guys on Friday. Have a good one.